Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to discuss current affairs of 17th March 2021. In this lecture, we are going to discuss 7 topics which are very much related to UPSC. So let's get started with our discussion and let us see first article. Title says vaccines to foreign countries vaccines to foreign countries not at expense of Indians. So this is statement which is given from our center government. So this article mainly talking about vaccines. So vaccines of COVID-19. So this article is very important regarding GS paper 2 under health. So in this context, I want to give you a small homework. So you have to refer some vaccines like we have Covaxin, we have Covishield, we have Novavax, and also we have Pfizer, Moderna, and as well as Sputnik. So these are some vaccine candidates which are available across world, right? So you have to revise about some facts regarding this Covishield, Covaxin, Novavax, Pfizer, Moderna and Sputnik, because you can expect prelims based questions from this part. Okay, and now let us see detailedly about this article. So this article mainly talking about COVID-19 vaccines. So if you see context, it mainly says that Union Health Minister told that COVID-19 vaccines, they were not being sent to foreign countries at expense of Indian citizens. So we are also using this whatever COVID-19 vaccines are present, and we are also using for benefit of our Indian citizens also. We are not exporting to other countries solely, but we are also focusing on our Indian citizens. So if you see some details which are given by our Union Health Minister, he said that about 30 lakh people, they were administered with this COVID-19 vaccine in India, and till now about 3 crore people, they had been inoculated. Okay, and if you see, because of this, we can say we are having some healthy balance. Okay, healthy balance regarding import and as well as export, and also vaccine which is using in our domestically. Okay, in our India also we are using these vaccines, and not only in India, we are also exporting this vaccine. As of now, this COVID-19 vaccine is exported to 70 countries nearly. Okay, so in this context, our Union Health Minister said that we are not exporting this COVID-19 vaccine at expense of Indian citizens. So we are also using this COVID-19 vaccine for for Indian citizens also. About 30 lakh people, they were administered with this vaccine, and about 3 crore people, they have been inoculated so far. And in this way, they are mainly maintaining some healthy balance between export of this vaccine and as well as used for this Indian citizens also. So in this context, our Union Health Minister also focused that criteria has been mainly fixed according to WHO and as well as some other international standards, and we are following that standards. As of now, this COVID-19 is not a static process, because now again we are seeing second wave of COVID-19. There is increasing number of cases across country. So because of this, we need to focus on this vaccination of maximum number of people now. So because of this, it is mainly a dynamic process. And next one is vaccine is free in all government hospitals, and if you want to get this vaccine from private hospitals, so it can cost only 250 rupees. So for this 250 rupees, 100 rupees for maintenance charges of room and 150 rupees for vaccine here. So we are also making available this vaccine even at private hospital at affordable cost. So these are some important details which are highlighted in this article. And if you see, I want to give you homework. You have to refer about this Pfizer, Moderna, Covishield, Covaxin, Novavax and as well as Sputnik 5. So these are some important vaccine candidates that are available across world. Okay, so you have to refer some facts regarding this vaccine candidates. So we already have discussion regarding this vaccine candidates number of times in our Hindu analysis. So because of this, just revise those ones. And now let us see next article. Title says census incident data by 2024. So this article mainly focusing on census. So this article will be important regarding GS paper 2, okay, and this topic is important regarding both mains and as well as prelims, okay. So regarding prelims, I want to give you one question. So who is father of census in India? Who is father of census in India? So this question is mainly related to modern history, okay. So I want to give you another homework here. So please refer some facts regarding census. So don't forget about this, okay. So please see some facts regarding the census. So this is important topic under modern history also. And now let us try to discuss this article in a very great detail. So this article mainly focusing on census. So if you see context here, it mainly says that the provincial data for latest census and national population register, that is NPR, will be available before Lok Sabha elections in year 2024. So before this Lok Sabha elections that is going to be held in 2024, so we are going to have this provincial data for latest census, that is census 2021, and as well as national population register. So regarding this national population register, we have a detailed explanation, I think day before yesterday's lecture. So if you don't watch that lecture, please go back and watch that lecture. So in that lecture, we covered each and everything regarding this national population register, okay. So now this context mainly says that we are going to have this provincial data for this latest census, that is census 2021, and as well as NPR data that will be available before Lok Sabha elections that is going to be conducted in 2024, okay. So this information mainly provided by Union Home Ministry to Parliamentary Committee, okay. So this information provided by Union Home Ministry. And now let us see some details regarding this. So if you see some details, this committee said that, so there is a committee that census and updates of this NPR. So this committee mainly set up. So this committee is one of major thrust areas for financial year 2021 and 2022. For this financial year 2021-22, so we came up with this committee, and this committee mainly look after this latest census and as well as NPR data. So if you're talking about this first phase of this census, that is house listing and as well as housing census, that will be conducted along with NPR from April 1st, 2021, that is last year. But because of this global pandemic COVID-19, so this mainly delayed. So this first phase of this census delayed because of this global pandemic COVID-19. And this article also says that provincial census result that will be released in financial year 2023 to 2024, that is before this Lok Sabha elections of 2024. And primary census mainly abstracts will be provided at village level data, and as well as it will provide some important indicators data also, because we are collecting this NPR data, right? So because of this we can also have some important indicators data. So we are also using mobile application. So through this mobile application, if at all anyone who want to voluntarily give his information regarding this NPR, they can give that, and finally they can generate one ID, okay. So that ID will be given to this field officer, who is coming to house to collect this census data, okay. And this mobile applications will be available in 16 languages. So this is one of important prelims fact, okay. So this mobile application has been developed for collectively census data and as well as this national population registry. And residents, they can also go for self-enumerate regarding this NPR. So they can provide some data on housing conditions, household amenities, and as well as assets which are possessed by household by 2020 to 2022, 2021 to 2022. And also they can give some field work in this census in this phase 1 of the census 2021. So these are some important details which are mainly highlighted in this article, okay. And if you see this enumeration phase, so it mainly provides data regarding demography, religion, SC and ST data, that is scheduled caste and scheduled tribes data, and language data, literacy and education, economic activity, and as well as migration and fertility. And this will be done within 2023 to 2024, such that it will provide some important indicators also, okay. So these are some important facts which are discussed in this article. And now let us see next article. Title says post-vaccine blood clots, a form of rare cerebral thrombosis. So this article mainly talking about after taking vaccines. So there are some incidents of blood clots and as well as rare cerebral thrombosis that is seen. So which vaccine? That is AstraZeneca vaccine. Okay. So this article is important regarding science and technology, that comes under GS paper 3, because we are focusing on this rare cerebral thrombosis in this article. So now first let us see context. So if you see context, it mainly says that scientists at Germany-based Paul Ehrlich Institute report. So this report mainly said that blood clots observed in some of those vaccinated and a special form of very rare cerebral vein thrombosis. So after taking vaccines in those people, mainly identified some blood clots and as well as they saw cerebral vein thrombosis. It is one of rare disease. Okay. So because of this, Germany mainly because of recommendations of this institute, Germany put on hold on ongoing vaccination until a full review by European Medicine Agency. Okay. So because of this, Germany mainly put hold on this use of this AstraZeneca's vaccine. So not only in this Germany but also several European Union countries like France and Italy, they have called a halt to AstraZeneca vaccine after reports from Norway and as well as Denmark. So these Norway and Denmark, they came up with reports of possible side effects regarding bleeding and as well as blood clots. So if you see what might be reason for this cerebral vein thrombosis and as well as blood clots. So if you see types of RBC, we have mainly three types of three types of blood cells. So first one is we have RBC, we have WBC, and next one is platelets. So if you see types of blood cells, we have red blood cells, we have the white blood cells, and we have thrombocytes or platelets. So platelets play an important role in bleeding. Okay, so whenever there is any bleeding here, so this will mainly reach that side and it will prevent blood loss by bleeding. So it will go for clotting of blood. Okay, clotting mechanism mainly done by this platelets. Okay, whenever there is any whenever there is any injury that is happening, that will leads to blood loss. If at all platelets are not present, then what happen? There will be no clotting, right? So whenever there is no platelets, there will be increased blood loss because there is no clotting. So in these conditions, why these patients who are mainly showing some symptoms like cerebral vein thrombosis and as well as blood clots, because there are several cases of immune thrombocytopenia, that means low level of this thrombocytes, that is decreased level of platelets that is seen. So because of lack of platelets in blood, that is leading to bleeding and as well as bruising. So these are some important reasons that led to this cerebral vein thrombosis and as well as we can say some blood clots. Okay, and if you see some concerns here, so what are concerns? If you are talking about especially India also very much reliant on this Covishield vaccine. So this Covishield vaccine, it is mainly based on AstraZeneca vaccine, right? So this Covishield mainly forms bulk of nearly about 30 million vaccines that have been administered to Indian citizens so far. But in Indian case, we do not found any instances of such blood clots or reported so far. That means we do not found any cases of this blood clots so far. So now let us see some facts regarding this cerebral vein thrombosis. So this will be important regarding prelims. So what is this cerebral vein thrombosis? Cerebral vein thrombosis, it is a condition in which blood clot mainly seen in cerebral vein in brain. So if you are talking about this cerebral vein, that is very much important because it is mainly responsible for draining of blood from brain. So whenever in this cerebral vein, whenever we are seeing blood clot is happening, then what happened? Flow of blood will be obstructed. That means there will be increased pressure in brain. So that is finally leading to severe brain swelling. Okay. So this is the thing that will happen. So whenever in this cerebral vein, so whenever we are seeing blood is clotting here, so because of this blood clot, whatever blood it is flowing in this, that will be obstructed. So because of this, in this area, in this brain, we can see there will be accumulation of blood. That is leading to increase in pressure in brain. So because of increase in pressure, that will lead to severe brain swelling. So this is about this cerebral vein thrombosis. So if you see some symptoms, that will lead to severe headaches, blurred vision, nausea, vomiting, etc. And in severe cases, we can also see speech impairment, one-sided body numbness, and also weakness and decreased alertness. So these are some important signs and symptoms regarding this cerebral vein thrombosis. I hope it is clear. And now let us see next article. So before seeing this article, I want to make a small announcement on this platform. We came up with this current affairs package. So this course will be exclusively very useful for students who want to attempt this 2022 UPSC. So if you're talking about these components of this current affairs package, we are exclusively focusing on current affairs and also mains answer writing practice. So if you want to give attempt in 2022, so you need to focus on at least 1.5 years current affairs, and now this is right time to join this course. Okay, so if you join this course, you will access to current affairs from January 1st 2021 onwards. So in this way you can cover last 1.5 year current affairs if you want to give your attempt in 2022. Okay, and next one is mains answer writing practice. Many students they ignore about this mains answer writing practice. So mainly it is one of important reason for failure in their mains exam. So when you started your preparation on day 1 onwards, you need to focus on this mains answer writing practice. So if you see what is importance of this mains answer writing practice. So in final mains, you will have just 3 hours of time. So in this 3 hours, you need to attempt 20 to 22 questions. Okay. So on average, you will get 7 to 8 minutes for one question. So within this 7 to 8 minutes, you need to read question at least twice. And you have to come up with framework what to be written in your brain. And finally, you have to create that idea on paper. So within this 7 to 8 minutes, you have to attempt that answer. So within 3 hours, if you want to attempt all these questions without any one left, so you need to focus on this answer writing practice. So as you have good answer writing skills, then only you can attempt all these questions within given time frame. So because of this, answer writing practice is very important. And if you're joining this course, we also provide you prelims practice questions on weekly basis along with video solutions. So this course is exactly focusing on what is demand of UPSC. So finally, I want to say one thing. Please try to join this course as soon as possible, and please don't take this course as a choice. So details regarding this course which is given in description box. So please visit that once. And now let us see next article. Title says Bridging the Gap. So regarding this article background, we discussed in our yesterday's lecture. So this article mainly talking about vacancies in faculty post in central institutions. Now let us try to understand this article in a great detail. Okay. So this article will be important regarding GS paper 2 under education. And this topic will be exclusively important regarding mains. Okay. If you see here, this article mainly focusing on vacant faculty post. If you see context here, it mainly says that our Union Education Minister, he revealed that severe deficit in number of OBC, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes candidates recruited as faculty in Central Institute of Higher Education. So we already studied that there is huge amount of vacancy that is seen in the faculty post of the Central Institutes, which are mainly reserved for certain categories like OBC, SC and ST. So if you see data regarding these vacancies here, so there are about 62% unified unfilled vacancies for SCs in IIMs and 90% of vacancies for OBCs in IISc, and there are about vacant posts of 38 to 52% in central universities like IISCRs, IITs, IGNOU, Sanskrit, central universities, etc. So there are many central universities in this. We are seeing especially faculty post, vacancies in faculty post which are reserved for certain categories. So if you're talking about IITs here, so an official committee suggests that the way out would be exempt these institutions from reservation. So it is according to Central Education Institution Reservations and Teachers Cadre Act of 2019. In yesterday's lecture, we detailedly studied about some key features of this Central Education Institute Research and Teachers Cadre Act of 2019. in our daily current affairs PDF also I added about this article, and also I gave you some important provisions of this act. Okay, so if you have not gone through that, please go through that once. And if you're talking about this reservation system, so this reservation system mainly envisaged as an improvement for our on Vestal ideas here. So it is mainly affirmative action. So it is a mainly positive thing, okay, that can be done mainly to decrease inequality in our society. So because of this, we came up with this reservation system. So this reservation system mainly widely seen as the shortest path to equality and as well as equity here, such that we can bridge gap between people, okay, people of different communities here. And next one is, if you're talking about this central higher education institutions, mainly they recruit faculty to all reserved positions, and due to absence of this enough qualified candidates. So reason mainly given by the central higher education for increasing in this vacancies regarding this faculty post, that is for reserved categories here, because there is absence of enough qualified candidates. So because of these reasons, there is increasing of vacancy in this reserved post that is seen in this central higher education institutions. So what will be some remedial measures? So the remedial measures which are mainly given in this article here is, we need to go for government sponsored preparatory programs. So whenever we are going for this government sponsored preparatory programs, that will equip aspiring faculty, that will also create a pool of research talent, and as well as it could also help qualified individuals to overcome their deficiencies such that they can improve their skill. Whenever government it is sponsoring for these programs, then it will also provide some skills, and as well as wherever these students who are lacking there and wherever there is some deficiency in these students, that will be overcome, right? And next one is, we need to make these institutions of this higher learning more socially responsive, and we need to help them to meet the goal of addressing historical deprivation of communities based on caste. So based on caste, we are depriving those communities since before we got our independence onwards. So because of this, since before our independence onwards, there is some deprivation that is seen on this caste. Actually, from later Vedic period onwards, we see there is historical deprivation based on caste is seen, mainly to bring those people along with other communities here. We are providing some reservation systems in education and as well as in jobs, and also even in reservation and even in promotions also. Okay, we are providing reservations in education, jobs, and as well as even promotions here. So in this case, whenever we are not going for filling of this faculty posts which are mainly reserved for these communities, then if here inequality that will be also sustained here. So because of this, we need to go for refilling of this vacancy post here. Okay, and one thing we can do here is government funding of this quality universal education at all levels, and as well as government should provide some aid to this deprived through some affirmative action, such that it will mainly lay road of equality in this area. Okay, so this is gist of this article. I hope it is clear. And now let us see next article. Title says a robust economic relationship. So this article mainly talking about India-US relations. So this article mainly talking about areas of collaboration between India and US for further economic prosperity of these two countries. So this article is important regarding international relations, which comes under GS paper 2. And now let us have a detailed discussion on this topic. So this topic will be important regarding mains. Okay. And if you see here, this article mainly focusing on India-US relations. So what is context here? Here under new US administration, so we are expecting some economic relationship with India that can be expected to be an radar. And India has some enjoyed bipartisan support in US. So because of some closer economic relationship between this India and US, that will be helpful for profits or gains on both sides regarding GDP of countries, employment generation, and also productivity area. So in this context, if you are talking about this bilateral trade between India and US regarding goods and services, so we are mainly desired goal of about $500 billion, and this will be achieved by 2036. So this is goal here. The goal of bilateral trade between goods and services in India and US, that should be $500 billion by 2036. Mainly to achieve this, we need to have some areas of collaboration. So let us see one by one in a great detail. So first one here is collaborative response to pandemic. So we need to contribute to global containment of virus, because this virus that led to supply chain disruption. So because of this supply chain disruption, that affected mainly trade across globe. So mainly we need to contribute for global containment of virus. We need to come up with business partnership, okay, which are already taking place regarding supply chain. So whenever we are having some partnership in this supply chain, we can ensure some coordinated shipping, distribution of goods and services, and as well as we can provide some last mile connectivity. And next one is India becomes hub of global vaccine distribution, and as well as we are trying to building confidence in Indian IPR, okay, intellectual property rights regime. So in this way, we need to go for revive of this US-India health dialogue, such that it will also help mainly to drive healthcare exchange, okay. And next one is regarding macro trade architecture. So regarding this macro trade architecture, it can be strengthened with a broad trade agreement. We need to focus on resolving this low hanging fruit. And in this context, if you are talking about trade architecture between India and US, so we have India-US Trade Policy Forum meetings. So already we have these meetings, we need to revive them in this new US administration. And we need to go for restoring of GSP status. So recently India, it is removed from this GSP status, that is Generalized System of Preferences. So whenever any country which is listed under this GSP status, we have some lower tariffs here, okay. So India, we need to restore this GSP status preferences, okay, that is Generalized System of Preferences status to India. And next one is we should consider initiating of discussions regarding free trade agreements also, okay. And next one is mobility of professional labor. So regarding this labor, US government, that is new US administration, that came up with a number of changes. So whenever we have mobility of professional labor between these two countries, then we can aid trade in services also, okay. And next one is recent regulations in US impacted labor mobility, and recent regulations in US that addressed mainly, that came up with some mainly immigration reforms in US. So because of this, we can also achieve some important areas regarding this immigration, because many of Indians, they can go to US mainly for work, okay, mainly for employment. And next one is already we have MOU, that is Memorandum of Understanding on Labor Cooperation, that signed in 2011. So we need to go for upgradation of that MOU. And next one, it is regarding defense industry. So if you're talking about this defense industry, so we need coordination in this industry. So from both the sides, that is from US side and also even from US side. So from Indian side and as well as US side, we need to benefit from US technology and as well as Indian manufacturing. And if you see regarding this defense industry, private sectors of both sides, that is from USA and as well as India, they need to help in co-production and as well as co-development, such that we can increase our defense production, and as well as we can gain some economic prosperity in this defense and as well as aerospace sectors. Okay, next one is regarding small and medium enterprises. So we have MSME units in India. So in this MSME units, US small companies, they can come and they can invest in this MSME industries here, such that we can also have some opportunity of investments in India. And next one is regarding clean energy and climate change. So clean energy and climate change, they are one of high priorities of new US administration. So in this context, we can go for US-India Strategic Energy Partnership, and it should mainly get towards joint investments in industrial decarbonization and carbon dioxide removal and as well as green hydrogens. So in this area, we need cooperation between India and US. So first one is industrial decarbonization, and next one is carbon dioxide removal, and next one is green hydrogen. So in these areas, we need collaboration with US. And we can also come up with programs. Already we have some important programs regarding climate change with US. They include partnership to advance clean energy research. Next one is partnership to advance clean energy deployment. and as well as promoting energy access through clean energy. So we need to relaunch all these programs that are present between India and US, mainly to deal with this climate change. And next one, it is regarding digital economy partnership. So if you are talking about this digital economy partnership, we need to focus mainly on artificial intelligence and as well as electric vehicles, space, robotics, and we can also come up with some IPR reforms in our India, and we need to take off India from US trade representative IPR's priority watch list. So in this priority watch list, US mainly placed India also, so India needs to be removed from that list. So if you are talking about other areas of collaboration, so they include mainly education, innovation, research and development, agriculture and trade technology. So in these areas we can also have collaboration that will mainly leads to economic prosperity of country. Okay, so this is just of this article. I hope it is clear. And now let us see next article. Title says we need to urgently invest in public health. So this article mainly focused on two important things, that is public health and healthcare. So this article mainly pointed out difference between what is this public health and what is this healthcare, and what is the difference between these two, and why we need to focus on this public health and healthcare here. So this article, which is very important regarding GS paper 2 under health. So let us have a detailed discussion on this topic. So this article mainly talking about public health and as well as healthcare. So if you see why we need to talk about this public health and healthcare now. So because of this global pandemic, that is COVID-19, it mainly demonstrated importance of healthcare and as well as public health in times of health crisis. So in times of health crisis, we need to focus on healthcare and as well as public health. So now let us see what is difference between healthcare and public health. So if you are talking about healthcare, it is mainly related to science. It is mainly science based. For example, if we are suffering from any disease, so you need to go for diagnosis of that disease, and you need to go for some clinical assessment, you need to go for some triage, test, etc. And you can go for management, that is treatment, and as well as clinical trials regarding whether this drug is acting or not. So these all aspects are regarding this science based things. So it is mainly related to healthcare. So if you say exactly what is this healthcare means. So healthcare mainly refers to transaction between one caregiver and one sick person at a time. So in this context, healthcare mainly includes therapy, that is treatment. So whatever interaction that is happening between healthcare provider and healthcare receiver, that is sick patient, that is called as healthcare. Okay, whatever care which is provided by a doctor to a patient, and in this transaction there will be treatment. Okay, so this therapy, it is one of mainstay of this healthcare. And if you see about this public health, it mainly deals with community at large. Okay, important goal here, it is not only curing of disease but also disease control and disease prevention. So this is important difference between healthcare and public health. So this public health, if you are talking about this disease control, it is a deliberate and as well as it is mainly intervention based and quantified reduction of health disease burden, and it is mainly data driven. So whenever we want to go for disease control or disease prevention, so we need to know about data. For example, in this area, how many people they are mainly suffering from this disease, so how many total amount of population which is present in that area. So whenever we see that data is present, then only we can go for how many people are suffering and how many percentage of people, and we can also get some epidemiological data. So whenever we are getting this data, then it will be very useful for data disease control and as well as disease prevention here. So without there is no proper data, how can we go for disease prevention or disease control? So if at all there is no data which is regarding this, whether this area which is suffering with this so and so disease or not, so how can we go for proceeding this disease control mechanisms or disease control methods in that area, right? So if you are talking about this public health, one of important concern here is there is lack of data. If you see regarding this COVID-19, we have some data regarding number of positive cases, number of people who are hospitalized, number of people who are survived or who are dead. Okay, but we do not know about how much proportion of people they are present in that area. Okay, so this will be remain unknown forever. So because of this, it is one cause of concern whenever we are going for this public health. So in this context, what is need? The need here is we can go for social vaccination. So this social vaccination, it is one of important method mainly to control HIV AIDS earlier. Okay, so this social vaccination mainly conducted by National AIDS Control Organization. But if you are talking about this COVID-19, we cannot go for this social vaccination alone. So this social vaccination alone cannot be adopted in this COVID-19 because there is no proper data. And because of there is no proper data regarding phase 3 clinical trials of these vaccines, that is COVID-19 vaccine, now people they got this vaccine hesitancy. That means though vaccines which are available in market, they are not going to hospitals to get their vaccines. So because of this, we are facing important problem, that is vaccine hesitancy. And even after this post vaccination surveillance, it is not there. So whether how many people they are seeing some adverse reactions or adverse vaccine reactions, everything that is not being conducted in India. So what is need here? Here in this COVID-19, we need strong social determinants of infection transmission, because whenever we are going for markets or whenever we have going for so and so area which is overcrowding, then that will leads to increased transmission of this COVID-19. And there is also lack of cough or sneeze equity. Some people who are suffering from this COVID-19, they do not get any symptoms here. And if you see in urban areas and as well as in rural areas, we are seeing urban-rural divide mainly regarding health awareness and as well as education regarding this COVID-19. So some of these factors are also common for influenza and as well as normal TB diseases. But if you are talking about other diseases like typhoid, cholera, leptospirosis, scrub typhus, malaria and as well as rabies, they have some environmental determinants. Regarding this COVID-19, we have environmental determinants and also even social determinants here. So if at all any country, whenever they are giving equal status to public health and as well as healthcare, that means whenever we are focusing on disease control or disease prevention along with this treatment of this disease, so those countries they can address this social and environment determinants, and as well as that will be helpful mainly to control these diseases. Okay, so we need to focus on this public health and as well as healthcare with equal status. Okay, so this is just of this article. And now let us see next article. Title says Responsible Artificial Intelligence, the need for ethical guardrails. So this article mainly focusing on artificial intelligence. So this article mainly focused on advantages of this artificial intelligence and what are negatives, what are disadvantages, and finally what to be done. So this is important thing which is mainly discussed in this article. And now let us focus on this artificial intelligence. As you know, this artificial intelligence, it is a fourth industrial revolution now. So we came up with artificial intelligence, we came with robotics, we came with different technologies, right? So by using these technologies, we have number of advantages. So if you see, one coin have two sides. So we have advantages on one side and on other side we have some negatives. Okay, so these negatives here it will increase inequality. Okay, so it will be increase inequalities within society, and also it will increase inequalities within these countries also. Okay, so now let us try to understand this article in a great detail. This article mainly talking about this artificial intelligence. So as we know, this artificial intelligence, it is engine of fourth industrial revolution. So in this fourth industrial revolution, we came with automation, we came with big data, and as well as we came with algorithms. So these automation, big data and as well as algorithms, they continue to sweep into new corners of our life every day. So if you're talking about this artificial intelligence, we have number of advantages. For example, that can be useful in eradication of hunger. So you might be thinking like how it will be useful for eradication of hunger, because whenever we are using artificial intelligence in agriculture, we can increase our crop yields and we can also increase our productivity such that we can go for eradication of hunger. And next one is it can also be used mainly to decrease poverty and as well as disease. So if you're talking especially regarding disease, so number of disease that can be easily diagnosed and precisely diagnosed mainly by using this artificial intelligence. For example, this artificial intelligence mainly made cancer detection very faster and as well as very precise. And this artificial intelligence also opened up new unimaginable pathways mainly regarding climate change mitigation, regarding education and also scientific discovery. So in this way, artificial intelligence mainly contribute for more than $15 trillion to world economy by 2030. So it will be at about 14% to global GDP. Okay. So this is important thing that you should remember whenever you are writing mains answer. So this type of data that can be used directly. And if you are talking about this artificial intelligence, recently one study mainly published in Nature reviewing the impact of artificial intelligence on sustainable development goals. So in this study it mainly said that artificial intelligence may act as an enabler on 79% of all SDG targets. And in this report it also said that this artificial intelligence that can actively hinder 39% of sustainable development goal targets. So how it will hinder this sustainable development targets? So first one here is it will mainly requires massive computational capacity. It also requires more power hungry data centers, and also it will require some big carbon footprint. Artificial intelligence could compound digital exclusion also. Okay. So whenever we are using this artificial intelligence, whenever you are using robotics, so robotics and these artificial intelligence companies, they are building intelligent machines. So these intelligent machines that will perform tasks typically which are carried out by low income workers. That means low skilled workers, such that it will also replaces this low skilled workers, and as well as it will replace cashiers and even fruit picking robots that will replace these field workers also. So because of this artificial intelligence, we can say many jobs will also be edged out, that means removed. For example, accountants, for example, financial traders, and as well as middle managers. So these jobs are at highly risk whenever we are going for this fourth industrial revolution. So without clear policies and as well as regarding this reskilling workers, that will not create new opportunities regarding this artificial intelligence, but it will create serious inequalities here. Okay. How it can create inequalities? So there are many countries which are mainly forward in this artificial intelligence, example developed countries. So because of this investments, it is likely to shift to countries where artificial intelligence related work is already established in those countries. So because of this, it will further widen gaps between countries. Already we have developed countries, we have developing countries, and we have least developed countries. So this developed and as well as developing countries, they can go for mainly artificial intelligence, right? So whenever these countries are moving towards artificial intelligence technology, so in these countries only investments they will attract it. So these least developed countries will be remained as least developed only, such that what happened, whatever gap that is present between this least developed, developing and as well as developed countries, that will be further widened. Okay. And there is also one more issue regarding this privacy concern. So whenever we are using any information or any technology here, so for example, if you are booking anything on online, for example, if you are using Flipkart or if you are using Amazon and you are ordering anything, groceries or any items, then your data will be collected by this, right? So that data can be used mainly by other companies whether to set up that one or not here. So in this way we can also, this non-privacy or privacy concerns will also come into issue whenever we are moving towards this artificial intelligence. So in this way, what is need? The need here is we need to go for self-regulation. So this self-regulation can be done for some extent, not full extent. And next one is whole of society approach to artificial intelligence governance. So we can go for this whole of society approach. So this whole of society approach, that is mainly helpful to enable to develop broad-based ethical principles, cultures and as well as code of conduct that will help to mainly mitigate harm. Okay. And we can go for regular reviews and as well as audits during design, development and as well as deployment phases of these robots and artificial intelligence, such that we can also move towards inculcation of transparency, accountability, and we need to go for inclusion and social trust for this artificial intelligence. And if you see, now we are going for a good start. So in this good start, I will give you two examples. So first one is United Nations Secretary General roadmap on this digital cooperation. So this United Nations Secretary General's roadmap on this digital cooperation that lays out need for multi-stakeholder efforts mainly for global cooperation in this artificial intelligence. And next one is artificial intelligence mainly used in such a manner that it should be trustworthy, it should be human right based, and it should be safe, and it should be sustainable, and as well as it should promote peace. If you have might seen that Robo movie, okay, so in this Robo movie, what happened, because of some alterations in that robo, that led to some destructions, right? So whatever robots which we are using, whatever artificial intelligence we are using, that should be trustworthy, and that should be human right based, that should not violate any human rights, and that should be safe, and that should promote peace, that should not be used for against any country. Okay, and next one is UNESCO also has developed a global comprehensive standard setting draft recommendations on ethics of artificial intelligence, mainly to member states. So this draft recommendations on this ethics regarding this artificial intelligence mainly focuses on deliberation and as well as adoption of this ethics regarding this artificial intelligence. And many countries including India are also cognizant to advantages and as well as risk, that is opportunities and as well as risk with this artificial intelligence. And these countries are mainly striving to strike the right balance between artificial intelligence promotion and as well as artificial intelligence governance. Mainly that will be very much helpful for greater public good. Okay, so this is gist of this topic. I hope it is clear now. Now let us see today's main question. Question here is, without adequate safeguards, artificial intelligence can widen social economic shims, leading to discriminatory outcomes. So in this context, you can write about discrimination within country, okay, within country, and you can talk about between countries. Okay, how it will lead to increase in gap, how it will lead to social inequality. So in this way, you can write this answer. Answer should not be more than 150 words. Okay, try to write this answer. By this, we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. And don't forget to enroll this current affairs package. Thank you so much.